to the value of extended reality technologies to business. I'm JP Gounder, Vice President and Principal Analyst with Forrester. And I want to share with you today some lessons about how leaders in APAC are thinking about extended reality technology. My agenda today will include several things. First, I want to talk about what extended reality really means. It comprises augmented reality, virtual reality, and mixed reality. So what do we mean by these terms? I then want to give you some examples of how enterprises are using these technologies to drive business value today. I also want to talk about the APAC market and help you benchmark yourself against other leaders in APAC who are thinking about these technologies. And finally, I want to give you some recommendations about how your organization can get started with extended reality. So extended reality technologies mix digital and real-life experiences in the service of a specific goal. That is to say, we are thinking about something called the virtuality continuum. Now, the best way to think about extended reality is to start with the real world that you see in front of you. Imagine you have on a pair of glasses and you just see everything as it is. On the other end of the pole is a fully digital world comprised entirely of pixels, whether those were recorded pixels or they were pixels created from scratch, as in animation. Along this line lies a variety of different experiences that you can have. One of them is augmented reality. That would be superimposing digital information over or alongside your field of vision as you see the real world. So I have on a pair of smart glasses. I can see through the glasses, but I also get digital information, which is probably related to the things that I am seeing in front of me. You can also talk about augmented virtuality, although we much more commonly would call that virtual reality. And that is taking a fully digital world and adding physical cues like 3D sound, the ability to turn my head 180 or even 360 degrees, and being able to relate that digital world to a physical sensation. Mixed reality is a special case of AR with some virtual reality characteristics. In mixed reality, you can still see the world as it is in front of you, but you're often dealing with holographic imagery that is relational to the environment. So let's say I had a hologram that I could place on top of a table. It wouldn't fall through the table. It would understand that there was a table there. So you're mixing physical and digital and creating a single experience of reality. Now you might ask, well, haven't we tried this before? Didn't we try VR 25 years ago? Why is it work today? Well, today the market conditions are very different. Although this has been tried before, today's technology is far better from a resolution standpoint and most importantly from a latency perspective. That is to say, I actually am in tune with the things that I see in that VR experience. Unlike in 3D TV, which some people have compared these technologies to, there wasn't really a vigorous ecosystem of developers or content available. And 3D TV isn't as immersive in the first place, nor can you really move around with it. And business models today, as we'll see, are evolving, particularly to include the enterprise space, where you can solve a variety of business problems using extended reality. And finally, the economics of these technologies has radically shifted. Take, for example, virtual reality. Today's phone-based VR solutions have 35,000 times the power at 1/80th the cost. And the high-end tethered versions, 1.3 million times the computing power at 1/50th the cost. So the economics are very different, and that means that the results are going to be very different as well. How are enterprises using these technologies to drive business value today? Organizations are using extended reality technologies in a wide variety of both customer and employee-facing applications. That is to say, I might be using this with a customer to give them some kind of different experience, or I may be using it to make my employees more productive and more effective. In general, you can deploy extended reality to 3 different kinds of audiences. you could employ it with your employees in a very internal-focused kind of scenario. For example, if you used VR or AR for training purposes to help an employee learn about a process like a factory. You can use it in a B2B2C context. That is to say, I am an employee of your company, but I'm using it with one of my customers. For example, if I were a retail sales associate and I gave somebody a VR headset to show them something like, something they were going to buy, for example, in a retail context. The company still owns the device, the employee is still present, but the customer is directly involved. And I could also use it directly on a B2C basis, which would be, let's say that people in your target audience actually own their own headsets, or maybe they have something like a cardboard VR solution, then you could give them an app that you didn't have to be present for at all. And we can also then say, well, there's augmented, mixed, and virtual reality. So that's the way you should think about this, is there are 3 audience approaches here, and there are 3 technology approaches. Now, when we really think about the commonplace scenarios, for employees, field service technicians in verticals like manufacturing, telecom, utilities, this is a frequent AR or mixed reality kind of scenario. You're able to fix that piece of equipment more effectively and more quickly. You can use remote access to get first-person perspective where an expert who is remote from you can see what you see and help you through the problem. Or you could pick up different kinds of logistic information, such as schematics, along the way. Employees are also using extended reality for imaging and product design. Architects, manufacturers, automobile manufacturers, anyone designing complex products can do this in extended reality, and oftentimes they can also collaborate with others. You can also visualize data and assets. We've seen this across different verticals, but particularly in areas like energy or call centers. You can literally visualize in, let's say, VR data in a business intelligence dashboard, or you could literally see a 3D model of some piece of equipment that you own and understand what its real-time characteristics look like. Remote collaboration in any vertical is similar to what I described for field service technicians. I can see what you see from first-person perspective, and I can comment on it in real time. And certainly training, learning, development, those kinds of functions, especially in areas like healthcare. We've seen a lot with mixed reality where medical students are visualizing organs within the body in digital space in order to understand them better. Now, on the customer side, there are a lot of very commonplace scenarios as well. Maybe you're doing some co-design of products. As a customer, maybe I want to redesign my kitchen or my bathroom, or I want to choose particular features for my automobile. I can do all of that alongside a sales associate in VR or AR in order to get the product that I would like. Customer experience. Theme parks are taking old roller coasters and adding synchronized mobile VR experiences to the roller coaster ride. It sort of rejuvenates this old asset that they have, and it helps them get more revenue by bringing people back to a ride that perhaps they wouldn't have ridden again. Endless aisle experiences in retail. You can't stock every permutation of every single good that you sell. Maybe endless aisle through VR or AR is a good solution. We see some experimentation there. There's a lot of marketing activity and engagement going on in places like travel and hospitality. You check into a hotel in one place and they show you what their resort hotel in Bali looks like, for example. And education of buyers. Imagine in retail banking being able to learn all about mortgages by having a VR experience rather than having to ask questions of the agent. So all of these are areas where we see experimentation today. So now we're going to talk about where the APAC market specifically stands at this time. And what we found in the study that we conducted was that early adopters across APAC are already involved in VR, and to a somewhat lesser extent, they are experimenting with AR as well. What we conducted in Forrester Consulting was a quantitative survey of senior business decision makers and senior IT decision makers across the various countries and industries that you see on this slide. And to do this, we wanted to screen out respondents who were unfamiliar. So I'm not familiar with VR, AR, or mixed reality. I wasn't involved in the survey results. As such, this represents an early adopter group. In other words, those who are sophisticated enough to be at least aware of these technologies. But what you then find is among those who are aware of the technology, there is a lot of experimentation already going on. When we look at this early adopter group here, they have two top drivers of their business at this time. One is, I want to improve employee productivity and effectiveness, and the second is, I want to improve my customer experience. Both of these things set the context for why these companies are actually interested in VR, AR, and MR. So again, among those familiar with VR, we see many APAC organizations are starting to implement, even if it's on a small scale. So 48% of those with familiarity said, we are implementing or have implemented some kind of virtual reality. Now, in most cases, we know from our research, these are small implementations. They could be an experimental deployment, a pilot. They could be, maybe in one location when eventually they would be in many. But you also see those planning to implement within the next 12 months, 33%. So that's a huge majority. Those of you who are on the phone, clearly you understand what the extended reality is. You are in that target audience who should be planning to implement something within the next 12 months if you haven't already. Now today, VR is seen as probably the most important of these technologies within extended reality. So we asked people to rate how important each of these technologies was to their future roadmap. Only 10% of people said virtual reality is a vital must-have, and that reflects the earliness of the market. But a good 46% said that it was very important, and another 38% said it was important. And that is a testament to kind of the speed with which the extended reality revolution is proceeding. Interestingly as well, in the red box here, you'll see that augmented reality on smart glasses and head-mounted displays is already seen in APAC as somewhat more important than AR on smartphones and tablets. And that's because you can do so many more things when you are hands-free with an AR solution, particularly on the employee enablement side of things. Now, when we asked organizational leaders in APAC about VR applications, what we find is that they have interest in a mix of employee-facing and customer-facing scenarios. So everything coded with a blue dot involves employees. For example, helping employees through better training or driving a culture of innovation at our company. Everything coded with the purple dot means it's customer-oriented. So marketing to our customers in a rich new medium, or helping customers visualize our products and offerings. What you see here is that APAC values a long tail of VR applications for both employees and for customers. There's diversity here, and in fact, that technology applies to both audiences. APAC leaders also see VR as a strategic area for investment. The lower box there, virtual reality will be a key platform for computing in the future, and it's a strategic investment. You see this as an important thing writ large across APAC. But many APAC leaders do see North America and Europe as being ahead of the curve in that top box, probably owing to the fact that a lot of the technologies themselves originated in North America and Europe. Also, APAC leaders don't see VR as too expensive or too uncertain to invest in. So for example, virtual reality is an expensive area investment. Only a bit over a third saw VR as being expensive. And virtual reality is several years away from being useful. Only 11% thought that it was going to be years away, meaning that it's actually useful already. Thinking about augmented and mixed reality. AR and MR remain less developed than virtual reality, but they see nascent usage for employee-focused scenarios in particular. Now, when we look at this by employees in the blue dots and customers in the purple dot, what we find is that AR and MR today are very useful for those employee-based experiences. For example, helping field service technicians fix remote machinery or other complex products, bringing remote assistance to workers via first-person video, or making schematics and documentation available to workers while they're on the go. All of these are very hardcore employee enablement technology scenarios, and something like creating new experiences for customers today ranks lower on the scale. So AR and MR at this early phase of the market are really focused on helping employees to be more productive and solving some long-term, very vexing problems like productivity for field service using AR and MR. Now, in contrast with virtual reality, AR/MR initiatives are less likely to have been implemented. So while VR in APAC is a 48% implementation rate among those who are familiar with these technologies, augmented reality has been implemented among 29% and mixed reality at 26%. Again, part of that is that augmented and mixed reality are simply less mature technologies with maybe fewer options or less knowledge, less channel to get to market, etc. They're simply at an earlier stage of development. But when you look at the number who are interested, even if they have no immediate plans, it's 41 and 43%. So I think that when vendors are able to enable you with these technologies, people in APAC will be interested in trying them out. We also asked people, about augmented and mixed reality in terms of the same things we asked about virtual reality. For example, other regions are more advanced in augmented and mixed reality. That came up very high, once again, because many of the vendors who originated these technologies started in Western nations. But when you look at augmented and mixed reality will be a key platform for computing in the future, some 79% of APAC leaders agree with that. So I think this is a case of people who are aware of it are starting to see the potential. They are thinking that this is going to be important. They just haven't found yet. Maybe in 2016 they haven't. Maybe in 2017 they will. They haven't found it easy yet to implement. So virtual reality, driving the virtual reality efforts. Today, APAC leaders value features and vendor relationships when they're purchasing VR. APAC leaders have a number of high demands for VR, and reliability stands out to me as one that's very interesting. So of course, people care about features and functions. They want to work with vendors that they have some familiarity with. They want it to be usable and open. But when you look at those who say it's a vital or must-have, the top-rated characteristic here is actually robustness and reliability. And what that speaks to is the fact that this is a highly consumerized market at the moment. We have a lot of consumer equipment, but enterprises have a higher bar for performance. As all of you know, having an enterprise-class solution to actually solve business problems is desirable. So one thing that you should be looking for is the enterprise savvy, the robustness and reliability of any solution that you would be implementing. Engineering it in an enterprise class fashion is probably something that you should be looking for. We also asked people what kinds of devices they would plan to acquire for their VR efforts. Of course, headsets like the Rift and the Vive come up high, but I think it's very important to also note that high-end desktop workstations for developing VR content and applications is critical, as are high-end desktop PCs for running VR experiences. Today, what we're seeing is a lot of innovation is happening in the tethered area, and tethered devices must be tethered to high-end PCs, desktops, workstations. A lot of the development going on here is also on the avant-garde. That is to say, people are figuring out all of these things from scratch. So if you want to be an early adopter, you want to make sure you have a workstation that makes sure developers have the ability to develop these experiences. We had some key highlights of the survey findings in the study that Forrester Consulting conducted. First, we found that in APAC, among leaders who are familiar with extended reality technologies, 48% of those organizations are in the process or have completed implementing VR at some level of scale. Now, from our research, we know that this is usually relatively small scale today, but it does show that if you are an APAC organization and you are familiar with extended reality, at this point, you should be experimenting because many of your peers are doing so. We also found that VR implementations focus on customers and employees, while AR and mixed reality solutions tend to focus on employees. That is to say, when you're using VR, you could be using it in a customer-facing context to build some kind of new customer experience, to build some sort of a marketing experience, educational experience, etc., that is experienced directly by the customer. You could also be using VR for training or something like that for your employees. On the AR and MR side, you're much more likely to be equipping technical personnel like field service technicians or engineers for various kinds of field service applications, for remote connections, and for visualizing schematics and things like that. The features and functions of VR products are widely considered an important criteria during selection, but it's robustness and reliability that ranks as sort of most vital if you rank it in terms of the vital rankings. And what this says to us is that many enterprises are interested in VR, but they also seek the savvy of an enterprise class solution, and they want robustness and reliability as sort of business standard. For VR, most organizations see head-mounted displays as important. We're also seeing 80% of leaders in APAC that see VR applications providing value by helping improve employee training. So employee training is a very early and important scenario. I'll give you an example of how this would work. Imagine you run a dangerous factory, a factory where there are many potential dangers for employees. Rather than training them in the factory, sometimes it might be very useful to train them in a VR experience that sort of replicates that factory. They get all of the learning without any of the danger. With AR and MR, AR is moving from smartphones and tablets to smart glasses and head-mounted displays. We're seeing lots of energy around this, although it is early, but APAC leaders recognize that this is the direction things are going. 53% of leaders in APAC who are familiar with these technologies see AR and MR providing value in terms of helping field service technicians, fixing that remote machinery as a leading edge kind of application. And choosing the right partner, as is often the case in technology, is critical here. Over 60% of the leaders in APAC agree that high-end desktop workstations and PCs are crucial to the development of VR experiences, so you're not just looking for a partner for a headset, you're also looking for computing equipment to go along with that headset. So now I have some recommendations about how you and your organization can get started in extended reality. We want you to be on the right track. And one thing we want you to think about is that right now VR currently is more important than AR or mixed reality, but your choice should take into consideration what business goals you have. That is to say, if you have a highly employee-focused scenario like field service or like product imaging and design or certain educational components, AR and VR may be competing solutions. Maybe both technologies could be useful in those scenarios. So you have to really map out who are my users, what are my goals, and then determine which technology to choose. What we're finding today is that tethered solutions with high-end PCs are probably the main locus of innovation, both for developers and users. So you should be thinking about not just the user experience, but what equipment am I going to need to enable that? How am I going to give my developers the opportunity to be able to develop effectively here? Once you determine your users and you can start tackling problems that traditional technology cannot solve, but extended reality can, then you must focus on employees or customers accordingly. A lot of times this involves a good bit of piloting and testing because, again, this is a complex market. There are many different solutions, and there are more than one way to solve any given problem. So we do recommend a good bit of experimentation, trying different hardware platforms, trying different approaches to solve the same problem. Decide whether you want to develop AR, VR, or MR, depending on the problem you're solving and the target users. Then you want to think about, do I have the capability or a team that can handle the project? Right now, a lot of companies in APAC have developer talent. What you would need then is a software platform like Unity or Unreal Engine 4 that can allow them to start taking 3D content and moving it into an extended reality environment. You may also need to capture real-world video, let's say for holograms or for VR. Again, do you have the right equipment, the right cameras? Do you have a cinematographer, for example, someone who's experienced at capturing content? There are a whole set of capabilities that you need to be sure you have in order to succeed at this. And if you don't have those capabilities in-house, many organizations are going to the third parties, to agencies and to vendors and to development shops who can help them fill in those gaps. And so we feel that the right partner can help you develop the right solution within the right parameters. Although they are very close cousins, technologically speaking, oftentimes the requirements for developing in VR versus AR or MR can be different. With augmented and mixed reality, for example, you have to take into account the sensors that understand the real environment around the user. Within VR, you have a much more self-contained experience. And so that doesn't necessarily mean different software tools, but it does mean that the information that you need in order to develop for those platforms can be quite different. So again, if you don't have this knowledge in-house, a partner can probably help you do it. Thank you very much. I was JP Gounder, VP and Principal Analyst at Forrester.